And I saw this morning Pennington reaching out to me.
Oh, have you made some public comments about the accelerator?
Not public, no, but on the DL. So but we will hear. This will be our public comments on this call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing NDA about the accelerator's out, so we could talk about it, you know.
Okay, we got a problem here. Houston, 1 second. Okay, let's go up to the screen. As we start to crank it up. See, Carson is on the call today. Carson, I hope our tech's a bit better. I think we've finally come to a solution that's going to work.
Is our audio broadcasting?
Yep.
Oh. All right. Oh yeah, I see. I'm in the thumbnail on the YouTube. Starting soon, boy, we're really building up that excitement of the audience now.
Yeah. Carson wants you to tell him a joke while we're before we go live.
Now we are recording this, aren't we?
Oh, I haven't started recording. Actually, I should do that. Let me do that. Record to cloud. There you go. We're recording to cloud.
You know, in case the whole thing goes to shit, at least we've got a backup here. We can go.
It's a double copy. Not bad idea.
It's not like we haven't had any technical
tech issues. True that.
Oh, I see what's happening. That little up in the right-hand corner is just switching back and forth depending who's talking.
Correct. Carson, is there anything you want us to discuss today, mate?
Got that 20-second delay, right?
Yep.
Fingers crossed for no technical challenges.
I think we're good. I think we're going to be good.
Kind of dance along to your little jingle there.
Carson's asking us to tell us about the latest and greatest here. Well, you know, Carson, we can't tell about the latest because just like you, we are not allowed to.
Well, we can talk about the latest that the public is aware of, right?
Yeah, true that.
Out there in the public, there's quite a bit of that. There's quite a bit of stuff. We're just coming off Inspire, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff floating around out there that people are seeing for the first time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. Less than a minute to go, and then I'll let you do the intro, Steve.
I'm going to do the intro, eh?
All
right.
just allows me to kill a video and whatnot while you're doing the intro.
Yeah, happy to do it.
And just like that, we are now live. So over to you, Steve-O.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the, what is this, a fifth or sixth attempt?
Oh, no.
I'm going to call it.
I think it's more than that. I think we've done about 6 episodes, maybe.
About 6 episodes of a live broadcast of Power Up Live, where Mark and I basically are letting everybody in on a weekly conversation that we've been having for a year and a half now. We just talk to each other every Wednesday at 11 o'clock and talk about, shit that's going on in the ecosystem, and decided, let's just stick a camera on and share it with everybody.
Yeah, when you say 11 o'clock, that's 11 o'clock your time. What is
11
it?
o'clock New York.
4 p.m. London time in my case. That's why I am partaking, as you can see, because this is my last gig of the day. I got nothing more on today. So, yeah, just having a quiet Belgium.
So you're having a beer, and I'm still at coffee time. So I'm still on coffee time over here.
And in Singapore, it's nightcap time.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had a bunch of interesting topics last week, but we had such a bunch of technical mess we didn't publish any of it. So we actually have built-in content for this week. The same stuff we talked about last week and ended up never sharing with anybody. Plus a few new things that have popped up. Coming off Inspire, lots of interesting stuff around licensing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked a little bit about the IUR scare.
Internal user rights, yep.
Yeah, or just before Inspire, I had found that article about them, quietly going to remove all that, and kind of pushed it out there. It caused a little bit of a kerfuffle, enough to where it caused them to back off of that whole thing. I think they didn't want it. They didn't want overshadowing Inspire, but that's coming back, right? I mean, there's not any way that that they're going to take that stance on internal use rights, that it's going to be gone for everyone. And then their first reaction when people complained about it was to justify why, with a bunch of what seemed like pretty valid justifications from cost and partners not using the services, and or partners like turning on the faucet for the service and never turning it off because there was no cost, and lots of justification, but then because of the noise, completely backed off the whole thing. Yeah. But you got to know, since the justification seemed pretty valid, that's coming back.
Listen, the amount of cost to run cloud infrastructure and give it away for free is ridiculous, right? Yeah. When you and I used to get the DVDs back in the old days, and to print another DVD, it's less than $1, right? But now you're running the infrastructure, and you're just going to give that away to partners that don't care whether they leave it switched on or switched off when they're not using it. And it's consuming power, and it's consuming CPU, and it's consuming memory. Mate, it's a no-brainer to go, hang on a second, we're burning a whole bunch of cycles here. We need to control it. So I think the announcement before Inspire created more friction than they needed going into Expire. But I tell you what, in well over 100 million, I reckon, has been dropped on Microsoft. They need to sort that out. I think they need to go back, and they need to kill the action pack for anybody that's not a partner generating revenue to them. Right. So I think you said at some point that you can stack action packs. Yeah. I mean, that all they're doing is creating an environment for the old time of, burning the disc, burning the CD. They just created the electronic version of that for sure, $700 or whatever it costs, depending on where you are. Whoa, someone is calling me. Hang on a second. I'm just going to mute out. You're going to carry on at this point. I just got to take this call. I got someone outside. Yeah. I think that they're going to come back with this elimination of IUR, but it's going to be a little more granular. I don't think it'll be just across the board. IUR is gone. I think that as you
mentioned there's a bunch of partners out there or people or companies that are using IUR that frankly aren't accruing any value to Microsoft. They're not selling anything, no intent of selling anything. Those people just need to be gone off the program completely. And I think IUR should be tied probably to competency, because you can't reach a competency without selling some stuff for Microsoft. So you're getting IUR because you're contributing. It needs to be a two-way street. And I think that if they came back and said, if you have a competency, IUR is untouched, but all this free stuff.
Yeah.
And the other thing they were talking about doing was even on the demo stuff and things like that is that, I mean, I got IUR, I got more IUR than I need. We've got like, I don't know, 150 licenses of Dynamics. I don't need anywhere near that. I've got thousands of dollars of Azure credits that we don't use at all.
Yeah.
We've been given, I think they could definitely get a little more grant. Now we're not, I guess it doesn't cost you anything because I'm not using those things.
If you're not consuming, right, there's not an issue. But the issue comes about when, so for example, let's take a 30-day trial, right? Everybody spins 30-day trials up like, and I know this is not internal user rights, but I'll give you an example. Everyone spins up 30-day trials. I want to write a blog post. I spin up a 30-day trial to validate some stuff that I want to do.
Yep.
What they need to do is provide me a button in there that says, close that down right now. Like I don't need it again. Don't leave it churning on and burning cycles on the server. Shut it down. Just give me a kill switch, deprovision it, gone, it's out, and you're not paying for that anymore. It shouldn't be hard to put that type of functionality in place and teach the behaviors of good housekeeping. Clean up after yourself, just the digital equivalent of it.
Yeah, I wonder how much, I mean, if you spin up a trial to take some screenshots for a blog post or something like that, and then you just log out, you don't go back to it, it expires on its own. But I wonder in the meantime, what kind of cost it is costing Microsoft if no one's logging in or doing anything with it. Can't be much.
It's sitting there, right? It's on demand. So it's got to be kind of just keeping the lights on type thing, over that 30-day period. It's allocated disk storage. It's allocated memory. It's allocated CPU.
Yeah.
It's finished. Yeah. Like clean it out.
Yep. And not
delete it. Nobody's going to try and call me as well to see that, oh, do I want to buy, So it kind of can send a kill switch to all the follow-up mechanisms as well. So nobody's wasting time on stuff that doesn't need to be wasted.
Yeah. Some of the other stuff that came up that we could probably get into is some of the licensing changes that were announced. And some of those were pretty big. And depending on where you sit, those were either awesome news or terrible news.
Yeah.
The one thing that is consistent about Microsoft is they are just not very good at conveying information. I think they tend to get a little too clever sometimes in how they want to convey some information, and they've got some license changes, and we know the motivation behind the license change really is more about COGS, right? They found some leak in the boats, costing them a bunch of money. They're going to modify some licenses to close those leaks.
Yeah.
And those leaks are related to outlier situations because there's always outlier situations, right? But then they'll turn around and write a blog post and try and spin it as some new wonderful thing they're doing for all of us. Instead of just being straight up and saying, look, 2% of you are costing us a fortune.
Exactly.
Because of this hole in the boat. So we're going to close that hole in the boat, and the other 98% of you, don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. For that 2% of you, we need to talk.
I think there needs to be a stopping of putting marketing spin on licensing. Let's just call it what it is. What concerns me is that, if I look at the E5 plan and the E3 plan for Microsoft, there's been some changes behind it, but it stayed kind of static for a good period of time. Yet it seems in Dynamics, every 5 minutes, Dynamics, the Power Platform, that type of thing, we seem to be coming up with new licensing every 5 minutes. Like, come on, guys, just, let's take AI Builder. Why are you putting a licensing construct in that? You're wanting people to adopt AI. You're wanting them to get on, and you're wanting them to migrate from that to some serious heavy lifting AI in Azure. Don't come up with, now we're going to put a bunch of blockers in place of why you're going to have to pay for AI Builder for this little bit, for that little bit. It's kind of like, come on, like, provide the tools, create a business model that makes you money. It's obviously making you money because you're reporting the profitable results. But stop nickel and diming every little feature that you start to add on.
Yeah, I mean, you're making it impossible for people to buy it because they can't figure out how to buy it.
You telling me the other day, some flows you've got a frequency thing. Then tell me about what you were meaning that
just across the business applications group. Well, for one thing, I was looking at the CSP price list, which is the list of all the SKUs that I have available as a direct CSP that I can sell customers. And there are about 140 that are associated with the business applications group. There were, what did I say, like 27, something like that were associated with all of the office productivity, the Office 365 side of the house.
Yeah.
And that disparity, as you mentioned, Office 365, you got what, E5, E3, you've got some nonprofit SKUs, you got some student SKUs, you got, there's a few things in there, but the whole thing is only like 27. And you jump over to business applications, there are 140 of them, more coming. And they're not all like easy to understand. They're not all per user per month because some of these are consumption based, and even our consumption based, it's different methods of consumption, different metrics that they're being charged on. So for a customer to try and take advantage of everything there is to take advantage of, they got a hell of a time just to be able to figure that out. Partners got a heck of a time. So if partners can't figure it out, customers never will. Now they did eliminate, it's ironic because they eliminated the plan licenses, which was probably the catch-all people were using, because the plan licenses frequently just shove a bunch of stuff into plan. Plan license included a free version of Dynamics for Marketing. It included a bunch of stuff was in the plan licenses, portals or other things they just kind of bundled up and stuck in there. The plan license kind of felt more like what they're doing on the Office 365 side, right? You get your E5 includes, a bunch of capabilities that are all, and they just added into the E5 SKU. And that's kind of what they're doing with the plans. Now they eliminated the plans, so we don't have that advantage anymore. But I mean, there was good reason for that. Let me take a look at, see if we're missing any questions over here, because I'm looking at you.
No, that makes sense. I've got a guy just about to arrive at my door. He's a hire company, needs to pick up some stuff. One of the things that came out pretty strongly on Twitter is around the P1 licensing going away, and a lot of people have had dependencies on the P1 license to build their kind of apps that were Canvas-based apps, no dependency on CDS. And all of a sudden, the new model requires, the one customer talking to me, they got 7 apps running. They're all of a sudden like, well, hang on, that new SKU doesn't work for us because we've already got 7 apps running. We now have to go from the P1 license, what was it, $7 or something? Can't even remember what it was, to the $40 SKU. And they're just all like going, whoa, this is a this is, an increase for us. Anyhow, yeah. I'll let you discuss that. I just got to go sort this guy out at the door for a second. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think it's interesting. There may just be misunderstandings amongst people about how some of these things are supposed to be licensed. I haven't dug deeply into the P1, which you're really referring to, the PowerApps Plan 1. That's not the plan license for Dynamics. That's the PowerApps Plan 1, which was mainly meant for Canvas apps, not using CDS. There are seeded capabilities for that in Office 365, which most of those customers have. And I'm not clear how much of what these people are complaining about would be covered by those seeded capabilities. The all-you-can-eat, what used to be the P2 license, is the $40 license. And that, of course, would cover any scenario of all-you-can-eat. The per app, per user is the new thing they introduced, where if you have a user, and whether this is Canvas or model driven or combination of both, and you build an app, that is specifically for a group of users, and that's the only app those users are going to use, which is probably more often the case. I don't know how often we're seeing in companies that a single user in an organization is using many, many, many apps. Probably most often they're using one. And so for that one user, they're looking at that $10 a month license fee. And that app, I'll put that in quotes, that app, can include a portal. That can include a model-driven app, and that can include a Canvas app. So those three things together kind of make up that app. But I do think that I would need to do a little more investigating into those claims around the P1, because I think it's probably confusion. We didn't use the P1. We built everything we were doing was on the model coming from XRM. That was our comfort zone. So
I just know a lot of folks in that space are freaking out about it. Anyhow, let's we could talk for licensing for a while. What are your thoughts? A couple of things I have on top of mind around the ISV program. So I was with an ISV customer consulting to them the other day, and they said, if we want pure SaaS in what we're doing, right? So if we have a product and app source and the customer goes up there and buys it and they don't have a tenant, is there going to be the scripting to automatically deploy a fresh tenant, drop the solution in it so the customer can be up and running through that purchase process?
Not in the short term. I mean, that's something I've been asking.
And at the moment, I'm like, I don't know of anything of a clean tenant.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of breaking up on your end there, but I think that, we're in the same boat, right? We've got our IP, and we have it in App Source as a test drive because we can't figure out how people would provision that IP. They don't have a tool right now. I'm talking to people on Microsoft IP side. It's certainly one of the areas that they're aware of, but I don't think it's a high priority. I think if you listen to Goog's talk very much, he seems to be maybe a little confused as to why an ISV would have any interest in selling licenses. He kind of references it, if for some reason or another you want to sell licenses, as though he doesn't understand the reason why you would. He clearly misses.
It's SaaS, man. It's SaaS. If you're deploying a solution that has a dependency, the core infrastructure is CDS, right? I'm not going to, like the old school way was going, I'm an SI and I go and sell Microsoft licenses. The new world is I build an app. It's bloody awesome. Everybody wants to use it. It happens to use a whole bunch of Microsoft kit behind the scenes.
Yep.
My customer doesn't give a rip, right? They just want my solutions. I will sort out the paperwork, so to speak. The customer just wants to get up and running ASAP.
Yeah, they definitely haven't made that easy. I think one of the challenges on the ISV side for Dynamics, Goog's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
Knows Microsoft, been around a long time, knows partners, doesn't necessarily know the Dynamics or the business applications ISV ecosystem, came in learning it. And I think he kind of over-rotated with a handful of large ISVs, which of course we know Microsoft, all they care about is large customers and large ISVs and large partners, and got kind of all the feedback that he really needed about the program from some large ISVs that probably all operate a very similar business model. And that's kind of what we've been launched with. So a lot of these large ISVs, F&O ISVs, the licensing was not part of their offer. I don't know that any of the cloud embed partners were even included in the conversations around what the ISV program would look like or what AppSource would look like. So now we're having to kind of address that stuff, in a whole separate cadence here to get that caught up. But there is right now, if I wanted to sell a customer my bundled application utilizing AppSource, his job is to let them go do a test drive. If they like it, they can call me. And then our team will have to go in, get associated with that customer to be able to sell them the license, and set up our, go provision on there. We'll have to do all that stuff for the customer because there's nothing in there to do it for them. which is
definitely not friction free in what you're describing there,
not friction free or scalable.
Yeah, or scalable. And the thing is, when Microsoft talks large, come on, look at Salesforce. They've got companies there that are $billion ISVs on their platform.
Yep.
$1 billion. The next one was like $700 or $800 million. Like, I haven't heard, I've been around the ecosystem a while. I've not heard anybody cutting those type of numbers as an ISV within the business application suite. Maybe some awesome stuff's happened over in Azure, New Zealand. There was a New Zealand company called Green Button for a while that the Azure team actually acquired their IP. It got to do with compilation of video footage, scaling video rendering at scale for the movie industry, and Microsoft acquired the IP out of that company. But I'm not seeing any of those type of stories in biz apps.
I mean, look at the ones that we know, right? We know Click Dimensions, probably the biggest ISV. And,
50 mil was what they went for.
Yeah, so $50 million has kind of set the ceiling for the maximum value of the most successful ISV in the channel to date. Compared to $1 billion Salesforce ISV, yeah, there's a long way for ISVs to get to in that space.
So here's another question that came up this week when I was consulting with a company, an ISV company, and they were like, what do we do around our sell-through partner story now? How do we address that? How do we sell through partners if everything has to go through AppSource? The question was like, how do we provide a payment mechanism that's not kind of like full of overheads to compensate a partner for representing our product into a company when at the end of the day, they have to go to AppSource to download it, install it, and the billing relationship will need to be with the actual company, where a lot of traditional ISVs have kind of built the partner and the partner builds the their end customer. You know what I'm saying? So
I mean, it is interesting because it kind of makes you think about, as a business applications ISV, what is the role I'm expecting of a partner reseller to play today?
Yeah.
Before, I was expecting him to not only go out and promote and sell my solution, but to provision, install my solution, potentially extend my solution, do some of that sort of work around the solution. That was kind of the partner opportunity. It wasn't just selling a license. There was more opportunity for a partner behind a solution like that. Now with AppSource, and we're not at a point yet where it can be provisioned properly through AppSource, but there certainly are solutions out there that can. I mean, I even look at Click Dimensions, which is still probably one of the biggest ISVs, and I look at how they're dealing with partners differently than they used to. They're definitely bringing in much more services, onboarding services. They're less dependent on partners, I think, than they were, and I think they're less dependent on partners than they'd like to publicly admit. But I think it's a little tricky spot for those SIs to figure out how they fit in that picture with an ISV through these motions.
Yeah. Just while Steve looks up and catches up with the messages, listen, if you're watching the stream, we'd love to get your feedback. So even would like to get a photo or two. So maybe grab your camera, take a photo of yourself with the stream, send it through just so we know that you're out there and watching. And then a couple of questions I had for whether you're listening to this live or you're watching the playback. A couple of things I'd like to know. What would you like to see on the show? Like, do you want us to bring on guests? Do you want us to answer specific genres of questions around Microsoft Biz Apps? What topics would you like us to cover? You can either chuck this in the chat, and this can be put in the chat either after the show. If you're just watching the recording, you can put it in the chat there. We'll still get notified. Are there any kind of blog posts or stuff that you want Steve or me to write on? Like, we're always open. If you kind of see what we produce content around. If you want us to drill into a topic, both of us tend to do a lot of research around our topic, so we don't just shoot the breeze, so to speak, in our posts where we take them seriously and make sure our facts are right. And then, just from my side, with my podcasts and stuff, is there a specific Microsoft person you'd like me to get on the show and do an interview with them? And even what type of direction? Love to get your feedback. As I said, just chuck it in the YouTube chat comments. That'll get to us and we can take some action. Now, Steve, was there any audience questions that you wanted to answer there?
So I see, Frank has asked something about storage costs, but he just...
Oh, that was back when we were talking about the CPU cycles, etc.
Oh,
and he was saying, it's only storage and databases would be the cost of Microsoft. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see Malaretti, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was asking me what I would advise partners to build around PowerApps, to build business around PowerApps. So that's a big question.
Would you build a business around it? I think that from Microsoft's point of view, that's definitely what they're expecting a lot of people to do, right?
There it is. I'll tell you, the biggest challenge, I think, and this is more of a business challenge than a technical challenge with PowerApps for partners. When you think about Dynamics 365 enterprise sales, right? That's a sales application. Its purpose is clear. Its message of what it's going to do is fairly clear. The target buyer is easily definable, and the sales story is straightforward. Mr. Business Decision Maker in a sales department, I have a sales application. It does this, and here's all the features around the sales process that it does. But when we talk about PowerApps, now it's kind of like, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Everybody, I have a tool now that can do anything. That's a hard sales conversation. It's too broad and too vague. It's like people need, they need, it's funny, I told my wife before, back when I used to wear ties years ago, ties. I went to the department store, where they got hundreds and hundreds of ties on the wall. I could never find a tie I like, but I go in a specialty boutique that's got like 3 ties hanging right there with the cash register. I can always find one I like. So too much choice and too wide a field of options is very difficult for people to make a decision or buy in. So I think that, and the way we're approaching it or trying to approach it is we're trying to take some use scenarios that are common and creating some IP around those as at least what we may ultimately end up doing with a customer is not as important as we start doing something with the customer that they can at least say, got it. I got it. Yes, we could use that. That'll solve a problem for us. And I think that's the challenge with building a business around PowerApps is it's everyone's a customer and the tool can do anything anybody wants, which is almost impossible to sell.
Yeah. I like Carson's question here is what's our opinion around growing center of excellence insight companies to drive the Power Platform story and help traditional developer departments and citizen developers coming together? And, I've drilled into the subject a bit. I've done it with staff from some of the bigger companies that have been represented in PowerApps. So top of mind for me is Virgin Atlantic, and the model that they've used in there, I think, is fantastic. I think more and more we need that scenario of going in, creating a kind of a beachhead inside those businesses with a center of excellence that then can start engaging the subject matter experts within those organizations, identifying what workloads. And I see kind of like a DevOps type nature developing out of the center of excellence, where the developers are not necessarily what we would traditionally consider top end or .NET developers, but really the full gamut of developers, from those people that are subject matter experts and they whip up an app over the weekend because they're just passionate about solving this business problem, to ultimately handing that through so IT can support it, and if they leave the organization, it's maintainable and stuff like that by putting the various admin workflows in place so the organization can maintain that. I think that the whole COE scenario is the way that we're going to see multiple apps deployed within an organization. I truly believe that, what we're seeing here with PowerApps is a platform to take. I was in New Orleans. I talked about this on one of my podcasts recently, where a company had identified 226 applications inside their business that all could be re-platformed to the Power Platform. And of those, 106 were case management systems that they could see fit under the model-driven story, for example, but many could be picked up. And that wasn't even addressing all their paper-based processes. And so what they were doing is looking at end of life. How do we start transitioning all these apps to the single platform? And I think that more and more companies, as this light bulb comes on in their mind and they see, hang on, we've got a tool set here to really address so many of our business problems and challenges on a single platform, therefore becomes, the more it's used, the more it's adopted, the more people understand it, rather than going out and buying all these point solutions that have all the overheads associated, whether it's maintenance costs, whether it's training costs, whether it's, making sure it's secure, that it's not breaching or creating holes in the corporate infrastructure. I just think that COEs are definitely something needs to be embedded in all the top, customers around the world. Even if Microsoft is looking at from the top 30 of their customers that are, have looked at the Power Platform, each one of those 30 customers and all the geos around the world, I think, need a COE established, an operating model for doing it, getting the right people in place to evangelize it, and then, grow that COE with kind of like running internal hackathons within the business, running app in a day within the business, flow in a day, dashboard in a day. So that becomes like a regular cycle. So you got all these, what kind of really excites me about this, because I've been drilling into AI a lot, and there's a lot of concern around AI it's going to make people's jobs irrelevant, right? It's going to replace us all and technology is going to take over. No, it's going to create a whole bunch of new jobs. And I really see the Power Platform as creating all those new jobs for people that were not technologists in the past. Anyhow, I'll get off my high horse. It's something I get excited about.
Yeah, I think that the center of excellence is going to be interesting. I think there's an opportunity there for a type of partner around going into organizations and being the consultant that sets up, that manages, that oversees centers of excellence for companies. But it depends on the kind of fisherman you are. There are partners out there who will look at everything I teach you how to do is something you will no longer be paying me to do for you. And that's a deep-seated mindset of SIs in particular.
I hear you.
Is that this is all voodoo. You could never understand it. You need to continue to pay me to do it.
Yep.
And that story is held for a long time, but now coming up against our this is all voodoo story is all this noise about, hey, anybody can do it, citizen developer. So the voodoo story is starting to struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
And the truth falls somewhere in the middle. I mean, the truth falls somewhere between your mother can do it versus only a pro developer can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of it has to do with the mindset of that SI, whether I want to teach you how to fish, or I just want to do all the fishing for you and sell you the fish.
Yeah. I've got a sneaking suspicion that the operating model of the SI and the partner that worked in that space is going to go through a massive transformation in its own right. I think customers are becoming way more savvy about what value their partner is actually bringing. I think there's two things going to drive it. One, the customers are becoming more savvy. And number two, the consultants that work for these partners are going, you know what? I can go independent and I can work without all the kind of overhead that as a partner you put on me as an individual consultant. So I was talking to a guy,
but that's not new, right? I mean, that's
but I think it's gonna ramp up, because what happens is you're gonna see consultants that have been in this ecosystem for, let's say, 5 years and going, you know what? I've been partner side, I'm out. I'm going customer side, might be independent or going to go work for a customer. Yep. I was talking to a chap this week, and he runs the infrastructure for an IT financial institution and that deals with retirement plans, right? And so he works as the person that runs their formerly Dynamics, now moving across to just a CDS with all their IP on-prem, and he's taking them online. And he's had partners worrying him left, right, and center, and he's just like, they're offering me less than what I'm on by over $10,000, and they're requiring me to be account for every hour of my day, whether it's billable, accountable, or not. He goes, here, I have full autonomy to run this infrastructure. He goes, I'm using the community to always stay on the cutting edge. So I'm learning from the community. He said, I haven't seen any partner that can demonstrate stronger value or know more. They might claim it, but he said they can't demonstrate that they know more than what I'm doing and maintaining. And he goes, I'm working with a fast track team. They're helping me. You know, he goes, why should I go to partner? Everyone's telling me that I should, that are in partner land, but I can't see any benefits of it.
Yeah, I think the SI definitely is going to have to evolve. I mean, I think for decades now, we've looked at the SI model as I've got as big a bench as I can build of development talent with some architects over top of them. And my business model is based on utilization of these resources and billing them, for as much stuff as we can do, which creates some interesting scenarios that, wait a minute, that an ISV solution, that eliminates a bunch of potential development work for me. I think I'd rather build that for you custom than use an ISV solution. And I think that's happened, a lot. Part of what will impact that is having more ISV solutions. And the more ISV, if Googs and company is successful in getting a lot more ISVs, then really the role is less about custom developer and more about assembler.
Yeah.
I understand your need. The architects are going to be important, but the architects are going to need to understand not just what it would take to go develop that, but what are the solutions out there that I can put together and what combination that would solve this customer's problem without having to go into a bunch of development, because the only people that like development are developers. No one else on the planet, no customer ever said, oh, gee, can we do a bunch of custom code for this? No customer ever said that. So that'll be an interesting one to see how that shakes out. I see we got a couple other questions here. Frank is talking about the problem is the Microsoft account reps don't understand the Power Platform, and Teams is the only thing that matters this year. Well, I mean, every year, right, we're up against, we're in a business applications, at least you and I are. And so we'll always be in competition for the customer's attention with other Microsoft groups, whether it's the Azure team pushing Azure, whether it's the Office team pushing Office, the SharePoint team out there pushing SharePoint to try and solve problems that we'd like to solve with business applications. There's always going to be that competition. Not much you can do about that. But he does have a good point, because I talked to a lot of account executives, the AEs, that are assigned, say, to a big enterprise customer, and they don't know anything about anything. The AEs, I mean, their job is really to be the front, but they're responsible for selling that customer everything from business applications to desktop keyboards. I mean, the whole gamut of Microsoft, all up Microsoft. So I don't think there'll ever be a point where the AE themselves will have a need or will ever get deep enough into understanding what Power Platform necessarily is or can do for them. No,
that's valid. Listen, one of the other things I've been thinking about a bit lately is the PowerApps interface. And I know right now there's a joint call, and why we don't have any other MVPs here. We have a product interaction with the team around the interface and the new announcements. But one of the things in the PowerApps interface, which concerns me and doesn't seem to be addressed, is the whole theming and the fact that Dynamics 365 Word still appears in a CDS instance if you're doing a model-driven app.
Yeah, not for long. Yeah, not for long. That's about to be gone. Yeah, that's about to be switched over to PowerApps. I got that straight from Cunningham.
So that's going to say PowerApps?
It's going to say PowerApps by default. We're supposed to be getting the theming capabilities similar to what we had with Dynamics, where you could put something up there. We always had our Rapid Start logo up there instead of Dynamics 365. We lost that theming capability in the model-driven Power App, but that's supposed to be coming back. But in the meantime, they're going to do kind of a quick fix to have it at least just say PowerApps.
Gotcha.
That's confusing for customers. I mean, if you build a model-driven Power App,
totally, and then it says Dynamics 365.
doesn't have anything to do with Dynamics 365 at all. You know, Frank made another comment here about SharePoint and why it was so successful and great for SIs, and that XRM was the biggest competitor in the day. I think it's a little bit apples to oranges because, you know, SharePoint, first of all, SharePoint came with, right? I mean, you didn't have to sell a customer SharePoint. It came with Office 365. It was part of every SKU of Office 365. For that same customer to consider business applications, we had to sell them a license. And often that license was more expensive to get into business applications than what they were paying for every single other thing they used. And SharePoint was one of those things. So SharePoint kind of came with, which I think helped. Plus, SharePoint had a job, in addition to being a potential development platform, it had a very fundamental job of being a file storage solution.
Yeah.
I mean, a very fundamental job that lots of people could easily engage with and utilize those rudimentary capabilities of SharePoint. So when you talk about SharePoint, I think was able to get seeded with a lot more customers because of the way it came with, and that it already did some fundamental basic job that everybody needed. Yeah. Dynamics 365 or any of the business applications, they're not seeded, so you have to go pay for them separately. And they don't do anything without some understanding. I mean, they don't do something simple. You know, it's not like you could look it up, but in enterprise sales, I could just use it as a Rolodex. You'll never pay that much money for a Rolodex. So, so I think there's definitely a little difference in those two things of how they hit the market. Yeah. And it kind of reminds me, when I think of PowerApps, I think of the two things that I think are the biggest competitors potentially for PowerApps are Access and Excel. You know, Microsoft.
I haven't seen an Access database in a long time, mate.
Yeah, they got Access 2019. It's a product that's out there. You know, it's not web based. It's still kind of designed for your, you know, either desktop database or on-premise database. But
I just installed on my computer here. I just saw that as part of O365, it's installed on my computer.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's still out there. And I mean, Access was the first citizen developer tool, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. I mean, because I don't know that many partners ever built a practice around building Access databases. That was always, you know, Joe Handy in the IT department or wherever, somebody who just figured out, some business user just figured out how to build themselves a simple database. Yep. That grew into this big monster. And I think PowerApps, that's one of the huge roles that it has, is filling that same kind of spot that Access did in a much better way. You know, obviously now mobile.
In a cloud way, right?
In a full cloud way. And the other one is Excel. I mean, I'm still walking in. Excel's probably 1,000 times more prevalent in organizations than Access.
Totally.
But the same thing. But now it's not even a relational database. At least Access was a relational database. And you got people doing tasks that require a relational database on Excel. And I see it all the time. And of course, they're struggling mightily with that. I was actually talking to a potential customer just yesterday, I believe, about a CPQ system that they had built on Excel. Wow. Which is just massively complex, you know, system of formulas and combinations and bundles and all this stuff that's built on a spreadsheet, and it's just crushing their business. I mean, it's keeping them from growing. You know, their whole business. They got Salesforce deployed for. They've got tools out there, but then here's this weakest spot of their whole business is this one complete. This part of every sales process is building these complex quotes for their business, and the whole thing boils down to this big, massive spreadsheet that they're all afraid to touch. You know, nobody wants to knock the spreadsheet over and have it break, or you know. And thankfully, the guy who built the spreadsheet is still around, because more often than not, I run into where that person is not around, and these people are using something they don't even know how to fix or modify or update or do anything to. They just keep using it. We see that with Access databases. So those are a couple
Yeah.
of great opportunities, I think, for people to lift those kind of things off.
I had a guy on my podcast recently, Dan Lamont, and we're talking about the Dynamics 365 non-for-profit accelerator. And one of my questions to him was why the hell is it called Dynamics 365 non-for-profit accelerator? And he was at Convergence. He was at Envision. Is it Envision? Ignite? Which one was it? Ignite?
Ignite
Vision.
is a partner one. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Vision's custom.
Yeah. So he was there and he said, well, version 2's just come out and they've knocked the whole Dynamics dependency on the head. It now can be built directly on CDS. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'd expect. Now, I'm starting to hear a bit of chatter in public channels that a lot of the accelerators are just not up to par. They're crappy. They're not quality. They're definitely not something that I heard the banking ones just come out and people are like, are you serious? That's an accelerator? Come on. Now, I've heard good things about the non-for-profit. Hey, what was that?
From me before we went live. It is a piece of crap.
Well,
thank you for trying to buffer me on that one.
Okay, so tell me, what are you hearing? What are you hearing?
It's more than hearing. It's just seeing. I mean, I pulled the banking accelerator myself because I've got some background in banking applications. We built some applications for banks before, and was kind of curious to see how much of a head start that accelerator was going to give us in building a banking application. And I just was thoroughly unimpressed with that particular accelerator. It didn't feel like it was accelerating anything in particular. And
that's got to be concerning that they're releasing that type of stuff, which is meant to showcase. And if a partner is going, you imagine what a customer is going. You imagine if you went into retail banking, business banking, commercial banking, whatever it is, and you plop the version. I've not looked at this accelerator. Great, 15 years ago. Like that addresses like 2% of our business. That's concerning. That's concerning that it's not wooing people from the get-go to go, wow, you've really put some thought into this.
I think someone's asking why I was not impressed more. And I think that I'm really just more disappointed, I think, from what I originally had expected. I think that, I know the guys that are on the accelerator team, I know the guys that are running that team, talked to them about that at length back when they first started with the first healthcare accelerator. And this was going to be a huge thing for Microsoft. It was going to be this idea that for each industry, we're going to try and create the industry standard taxonomy model that can be used. Well, that's an ambitious goal. And in order to meet that goal, you need to get a lot of opinions. You can't just be, we're Microsoft, we're going to sit down and figure out what all these attributes should be called. And no, that wasn't the plan. The plan is we're going to go out to industry experts. We're going to go out to big companies that are in the industry, small companies that are in the industry, organizations that revolve around the industry, and get a real cross-section from a lot of people in that industry of what is an account? What do you call an account? What do you call a contact? What do you call this? What do you call that? And get consensus on all of these types of things. And I think that there was a process internally at Microsoft, and I don't know if that's just gone anymore, if it's still there, that there was a committee and it was a fairly high-level committee whose job it was to approve anything that went in the accelerator. Before, I mean, you couldn't just get 2 or 3 ISVs say, "Oh yeah, we like to call contacts people," and just get that shoved in. No, that had to go through a vetting process and a whole process of people reviewing and making sure that this is a widely accepted in this industry term that will be adopted, will be used. And I don't think any of that happened on the banking one. The banking one feels to me, and I think I'd throw him under the bus, Neil Benson, I'm in agreement with him, that it feels like they talked to one ISV. They got one ISV's data model and published it as the banking accelerator. Now, maybe there was all these steps that went on behind it, but it didn't feel like it.
Yep.
And I think if that's the case, then we might as well just forget the whole accelerator idea. It's not gonna do
The whole thing, it's got to be representative. It cannot be just one niche area looking at it and going, this is what we think is important. This is what I liked about the non-for-profit, right? Crowds like Blackboard, Avanade, that doing a lot of work in this space. And they were all involved in it. It was very much a collective agreement. They've gone through iterations. And then I hear this bad story come out about the banking one. And I'm thinking, Microsoft's been in banking a heck of a long time. Even internally, there will be industry gurus that have been acquired out of that industry sector and be on the payroll, right? To get this kind of stuff right and to not release stuff so earlier. Like, okay, PA Group. I like that the bank can work entirely in the ecosystem. Currently, several banks have several different systems.
Yeah,
I think banks are missing some basic functions currently. Bunch of work in banking
I don't know who PA Group is or who they're representing, but I'm not against a banking accelerator. I think having a banking accelerator
100%.
is an awesome thing to happen.
Let's just do it right.
What they've given us as a banking accelerator is not what it should be.
Yeah.
And I'd say to PA Group, if you think that what they've given us as an accelerator for banking is adequate, then we are going to be in a disagreement on that. I think that needed to be something different. I think another problem I have with the accelerators, and the banking accelerator is another one. I mean, you talked about the nonprofit moving to a CDS only. The banking accelerator still requires enterprise sales. It doesn't. None of these are. And I'm not even. I'm going to have to go take another look at the not-for-profit to see which one actually runs on CDS alone. Even with the healthcare, I don't think they were able to get it down to CDS only. When they first launched the healthcare accelerator, they they used everything, right? It required field service, projects, it required everything. It was almost like It was almost like, wait a minute, I see what the accelerator program is. This is a way to force people to, if they want to use your accelerator, they have to buy every damn app you sell. And they were like, no, that's not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
The best they were able to unwind, I think, was to pull maybe field service and project service with a different version of the healthcare accelerator that still required a couple of first-party apps. And now here comes the banking accelerator, sits right on top of the first-party sales app, it doesn't run without it. So it still feels like if you're going to make an accelerator, a CDS accelerator, are these Dynamics 365 accelerators? That's a different story. But if there's CDS accelerators, industry accelerators, they should just sit on CDS. Whether you have the first party apps or not, you can extend it further. I don't need. And actually, in looking at the banking accelerator, which I looked at it fairly closely, their ties to the first party apps are not that necessary. They don't go that deep. They could have very easily released that. As a matter of fact, part of what I'm doing right now is taking that open source accelerator and creating my own version of it that doesn't require the first party apps. It's frankly not going to take that much work to do. That's what they should have released as their accelerator.
Have you seen any movement around the common data model for all the Dynamics 365 apps being made available? The whole idea of common data model, the mantra, but I'm still not seeing them available to install into a CDS instance without a dependency on Dynamics 365.
So you broke up a little bit on that. Are you referring specifically to the accelerator still?
No, I'm talking about Dynamics 365 apps as a whole, right? I want the data models out of those available openly so that when I build as an ISV standalone apps, I can take dependencies on the schema only the schema, so that when I build apps for my customers, they're future-proofed, that when my customer goes, you know what, I want Dynamics 365 sales, I can go ahead, it'll just work. I haven't broken it.
I guess it depends on what value you place on a schema. And I think that Obviously, as developers and ISVs, we would like to tell Microsoft, there's no value in schema. Schema, schema. Your value in your application is in your logic that runs on top of the schema. That's your value.
Mhm.
It isn't the schema itself. There's no value in a schema. Not exactly true, though. I mean, I can tell a lot from the schema of some application of a competitor about what it does and how it works, even without seeing the logic, right? So there is some value in the schema.
Yeah, but do you know Microsoft are not necessarily saying that, because I brought up that doc a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
It clearly says that as part of deploying for CDS, they get to harvest your schema because they don't consider it IP worthy.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you can't have it one way and play the other for your own stuff, right? You're either it is IP or it's not IP. But it needs to be standard. You can't, play both sides of the deck.
So I think, frankly, I think that one's still mostly politics, right? I mean, every application that Microsoft Business Application Group has, there's someone who's responsible, or at least someone who's responsible, and they're responsible at the P&L level also for that application, right? And think enterprise sales, a perfect example, right? There's someone out there whose job is on the line based on the success and profitability of an enterprise sales application. That person does certainly not want anyone building any kind of a sales application on CDS. There's no upside to that individual at all of anyone trying to solve his problem in a simpler way.
But Hayden Stafford on your show said that they fully expected somebody to come across and create an enterprise sales app to compete against theirs. And I tell you, I don't know if you read my blog post, as I 100% agree. When the amount of R&D done on sales, the core sales app, excuse me, I said hadn't changed in 20 years. Now, a bit tongue in cheek, it's not been around 20 years, because what I was saying is that what was built 16 years ago was on a data model that was already 5 years old.
Yep.
The sales model that was already 5 years old at that point. Hence my 20 years. And the thing is,
I don't think
lots of opportunity.
I think Hayden's point that some ISV or company is going to now, because there's a available platform, build an enterprise grade sales application worthy of competing with Microsoft. But that doesn't mean Microsoft's going to make it easy for them to do that. Microsoft's, they're a platform company, but right now Business Applications Group makes most of their money still on the first party applications. They can't just throw that away and say, here, we're going to trade all of these $95 apps for $10 a month App Source subscriptions. They can't do that yet. I mean, maybe at some point in the future, as PowerApps grows, and there are, and we've gone from, say, X number of Dynamics subscribers to 50X that number of subscribers in PowerApps, that suddenly Dynamics 365 isn't, still the bread and butter. But today, I mean, that's the breadwinner for the group. So they can't cannibalize it yet. They can't cannibalize it yet.
That's valid. Well, mate, we're coming up top of the hour. I think it's time for us to close out. Remember, if there's anything you want us to discuss on the show in the future, there seems to be plenty of material coming out at the moment. But what I think I'll do is I will chuck us up to the outro and keep your comments coming.
Can anybody who's still on with us, how was our technical? Do we suffer any difficulties here? Is audio okay, video okay?
There's definitely been some in and out on the internet connection, which is something we're never going to control. It's happens on podcasts, etc.
And I don't know if that was both of us or just you or just me.
It was just you.
Yeah. No, it was just you. You're the one who couldn't hear something.
It was probably just me.
You're in some basement in some dark part of England.
Okay, so let's see. Look at that. We've got a nice green. We've got a nice green screen up here. Let's hit play on that screen. There we go. We've got a nice play button running now on the screen. Just while we go to close out. Keep your questions coming. PA Group has thanked you, Steve, for your insights. So fantastic.
I'd like to know who PA Group is. Maybe they can identify themselves for us.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Drop us a link
I don't know
to.
if it's somebody we know or.
Carson's popped in a suggestion, topic suggestion, analysis view. Take Garden Magic Quadrant for multi-experience development platform as an example.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we could take apart some of those.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, so Mary is an enthusiast. So I don't know if that means she's a partner side or
Awesome,
customer
Mary.
side, but
Good to hear from you.
a poll is going on. Oh yeah, we didn't do our.
I didn't even know how that poll works. Like, how do they?
You got your
Streamlabs. A poll is going. Who do you agree with?
So I guess you could ignore the poll. That was for a session we were doing called Agree to Disagree, where Mark and I were going to take opposite sides. Or you could just take the poll and say that I was right about whatever.
I tell you, okay, let's put in NZ and let's see if I get into the poll. Let's see if that, oh no, I've got to put exclamation. Let's try this. Exclamation mark, vote, NZ. Who knows if that does something?
Who the hell knows what that, I mean, who's going to understand that? Possibly vote. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Abdu, I don't know what you're saying. Just Mark, did you have something else in your sentence there?
Here, at least I'm gonna even it up.
Even it up. Well, we haven't. Oh, look at that. We go on a Streamlabs. Voted on NZ. There you go. Steve Mitter voted.
Yeah, so I won. All right, guys. We'll talk to you guys all next week. We're looking forward to it, and I'm glad we seem to be over our technical issues.
It looks like we got that under control.
Cool, man. All right,
Ciao for now.
Bye.